Yeah, I think I'm recording, by the way, so for taking notes is easier. Yeah, Hydra Solar could be really like see what becomes easier or simpler if you do things just different than and departing in a way how the researchers originally envisioned, right? Which enforces us to kind of later think about the security argument altogether. But honestly, this is an outdated argument anyways right now, at least in our concrete spec. So but we'll need to revisit this together. But that's very exciting to see that funded. So I started recording. I will record also attendance in the meeting notes, but as I think I'm the only one who brought an agenda item for today right now. I'm appointing a secretary for today, taking notes. Franco, you're so close, I can easily delegate that to you. Are you at the PC? Is it easy to take notes or something? Yeah, that's good. Okay, so I will rely a bit on you then later to collect what we talk about. So I shared, at the end of last meeting, we haven't really fully agreed in how we want to do agenda, like what to talk about next and so on, right? How it's organized there. I did put on this meeting's Google Meet invitation, proposed agenda item, but also prepared the meeting notes, which you'll find also here later also. Potential agenda for today. And yeah, main agenda point will be what is Hydra Head V1 again, or kind of maybe updating to some progress we made in between based on your feedback from last 2 weeks ago. But before we start, maybe can we collect maybe just a few word impression on like the overhead, the process, maybe just one idea or anything to improve quickly from within the round. I think who said it? Pi, you said it. Like these working groups are usually so much overhead. What's your impression right now?
Well, I've actually not been able to attend any since that first one, so I don't know.
Yeah, my impression is much better than the other working groups I've been involved with.
All right, that's good. Try to keep it lean and mean, right? I did record, by the way, Pi, that you didn't attend last time. So there's a counter on the charter, right? It was kind of a list of like who didn't attend, who did join when, right? Or basically, right? I just keep a running list of members are people who are interested, right? Who come to these meetings, and that's at least the current proposed way of how to organize memberships, right? So if you produce something and it's kind of if something is in agreement with this working group, it means like this people is currently present and stays present as who would endorse it, right? Or who should be knowing what this was about. So yeah, I'll do that for now. Let's see how that goes. So you would see that, and all is just in this big ass README, right? Everything on the gate track was the preliminary charter, which I might want to bring up for a vote, but maybe we can also just do that today, actually.
Sebastian,
maybe yeah,
it would worth to mention that on the README of the repo of the working group about collecting this attendance.
Yeah, so as you can, I'll just share my screen briefly to run that by you. Welcome new members. We have new members, which I can now just highlight. New members in the working group. Since last time, we have Ilya, who just joined. Welcome. Ben, who just joined. Franco is also new and who's secretary already. Nice. Colin, Sam, and Michael didn't join, although they showed interest. So I'll just keep, as I said, running notice here. And Pi just cleared their counter, right? So congrats on that. Yeah, so keeping it lean is the idea. everyone can be a member, I think, and we should be like know in advance when what is discussed. Maybe it's interesting, so you join. Okay.
Well, Michael Yagi and Sam Delaney are in a way represented here already by Ilya, since they're coming from the same project.
Okay, so you're a DAO.
Well, they're just working on the same project, but mostly they're going to
Yeah, of
have
course.
similar
Yeah,
views,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. So
Projects
I
are
take a
kind of
note.
DAOs.
I take a note that maybe individual persons' attendance, maybe they're not so useful if we can have proxies or kind of somebody from a group. Okay.
Potentially, yeah.
You wanna let's see about that, right? It doesn't really matter right now, for example, but if we are about kind of voting on something or any democratic process, probably it needs to have like a quorum, but let's see, didn't need that yet, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, Ilya. That as a welcome message then.
By the way, I want to apologize for dropping the ball on my secretarial duties from last meeting. I just somehow every time I tried, I didn't get around to rewatching the recording and getting the meetings down. But the general gist was that so the first 15 minutes we discussed kind of your changes, Sebastian, to the charter, particularly regarding the new members and sort of how that all works. Then we moved on to the main discussion for last week, which was essentially what should Hydra V1 look like, right? We didn't have a lot of people on the call, so we mainly got feedback essentially from me and from Tudor, who is also
And
on the call
Phil.
today. Oh, Phil, yes, Phil as well. He wasn't able to speak because he was sort of straddling this call and a Twitter space, but he did send in a couple of, interesting messages to queue them up for discussion in the future. So yeah, I think what we ended up saying is we wanted to continue the discussion about Hydra V1 in the following meeting. So that's today's meeting. And we wanted to invite some people who would have additional feedback about this, particularly people from the Hydra auction project, which may be the furthest along of all the dApps building on top of Hydra, because they've been building this thing for the past year, and it's a fairly sophisticated application, moving stuff in and out of a Hydra head with a dApp. So yeah, I think that's kind of the first big agenda item queued up for today. In terms of Tudor's main comments from last time, essentially they came down to sort of needing more flexibility in the head. So for example, consensus, not unanimous, but perhaps less than unanimous, because during the practical operations of a dApp using Hydra, it should be expected that nodes may go down, but your dApp needs to keep going, right? So you can't necessarily stall consensus. Other comments were about the fact of how minting on L2 can't really take effect on L1 because of the fundamental constraints of L1's minting policies, right? Maybe if there were some techniques or something to get around that, possibly through multi-sig based minting policies that could actually be released out as an effect from Hydra's settlement on L1, something along those lines. And then
I would like to call these like Hydra compatible minting policies or something, or off-chain compatible minting policies, right?
Essentially, if you have a multi-sig based state channel, the best you can do in terms of minting is if the minting policy allows for the multi-sig to mint, then you're fine. I don't think you can do any better than that on L1. And then incremental commits and decommits were identified as very important. Because information needs to be able to flow in and out. I think it's particularly for the information that it's important, right? To flow in and out of the Hydra head. Although it would be nice as well for other use cases, such as, for example, the Hydra auction, to also have incremental commits and decommits for moving funds or tokens into the Hydra head together with the information, because oftentimes information, the way that you know that it's the true information is by attaching it to some token, right? And so if you're moving state into the state channel, you generally want to move it together with a token so that you have that provenance of where does this information come from, and when it comes back, where it's being put into like a legitimate UTXO that can't be forged. I think that's overall, those were the main themes from the last meeting. You posted the recording for anyone who's interested to dive deeper into.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to mention, last theme from last week was in terms of some of the discoverability and sort of, how do you discover which heads are available, which heads have which participants, which sort of capacities they have, and maybe some initial steps towards the networking of heads, right? Some of that stuff, may be required for a DApp that reasonably tries to use it. I'm glad we have Ilya here today. He can tell us a little bit about how they address that problem with Hydra Auction, where indeed for the DApp, it was necessary to implement a whole not layer, but like a whole
mechanism
of the architecture that deals with discovering Hydra heads, tracking their status, and sort of linking them to how they're used in the DApp's workflow. So
I want to stress the importance of web wallets, and that was the main thing.
So
right, and those were Phil's comments, right.
These are actually the only ones which were recorded here, right, and writing. So I want to pick that up very, very, very much. I just want to mention also there has been another input from Phil also about these kind of conversations we need to have. Maybe this was also this discoverability, or kind of like how can we make things more aware of off-chain layer 2 ledgers and make things interoperable, right? I just want to say, let's have a future agenda item about this. We're not sure yet how, when exactly. It's definitely not something which is for Hydra Head V1, the topic, but I really am keen that maybe we all together to have at least a CPS, right? But maybe it is already kind of covered somewhere, but have work on a common understanding there.
Right. My main reason I wanted to get it out as early as possible is because our big advantage over the more progressed ecosystems is, it's hard to change something once it's there, right? It's always like, oh, we're going to do this in the future. It's like tech debt, but at that architectural level.
Yeah, so ideally, I would say we just wrap up our understanding what we believe on concretely the Hydra Head project. What is that V1? I get my answer, I'm happy, and then we can figure out how can we make Midgard and Hydra Head compatible for wallets, whatever that means, right?
Yeah, that's totally fine.
For example,
more important than that to me is the web stuff, right? It's like we have a ton of stuff in our ecosystem, a ton of tooling, but in practice, you basically only see adoption when web tooling's available. Like Aiken was when we first had like widely accessible development, and that was because you're not using Aiken for on-chain, for off-chain, etc. Everyone's using like Lucid or web toolkits,
and these particular inputs we took actually in, and we had a bit of a progress in figuring out concrete things on the Hydra roadmap, or basically we collected these thoughts first. It was only thoughts. What it means, version 1 is basically this column here, right? Besides the stuff we all know and love and would like to have, you mentioned an SDK for interacting with the Hydra head itself. Should be easy and straightforward, not needing to build and run anything, right? That's something that got drafted by Reza, and now I would say grouped together with most of the core team actually. So I would maybe love that, maybe not now, right? But basically, if we can get some of the inputs on this item, this would be it, right? So if it is about having at least one SDK integrated nicely to be able to just natively actually kind of interact with the SDK, that would be this item. I think I hacked something together for Hydra Doom. I've seen that, but there is other stuff. We always ad hoc, right? We need to kind of make this better. Mesh, Lucid NG, or what's it called now? You would know, Phil.
Yeah, Lucid Evolution. Yeah.
Evolution. Yeah, exactly.
And Blaze is another one that's
Yeah.
gaining popularity.
So I'll just, you know what? What's your GitHub username, Phil, by the way?
COLLL78. I'll post it in the chat.
3 L's 7-8.
Yeah, the it's the same with
This
like
one?
Lucid, like the TypeScript accessibility. It's the same thing with not running infrastructure. Basically, like another .boom came from Lucid, one came from Aiken, and the other .boom came from Blockfrost, right? Because no one wants to deal with running their own infrastructure, and a lot of people just give up because the tooling is so painful.
In that vein, one of the things. Now, I don't know if it'll get into a state that is fully usable by the time that we do this Hydra Doom stuff, but it is kind of being a forcing function on a Hydra control plane implementation, which is spinning up new Hydra heads for a particular workload and kind of monitoring them dynamically. So we're kind of just doing the bare minimum needed for the Hydra Doom demo, but it will then be an open source repo that we can start kind of as an ecosystem improving on that. Another thing that Sunday Labs is going to start working on soon is a CIP for extending SIP30 with kind of broader network awareness, right? So what would be a huge shame is if the wallet solution for multiple networks and layer 2s, etc., was like the way that it works for switching to testnet. You go in, you switch your wallet to something different, and then you connect that to a dApp. I think that would, basically just ruin the user experience. And so what I want to do is extend SIP30 so that the dApp can say, hey, we want to connect to this network. And maybe, is there something already started on that? Is that what you're pulling up, or?
Is it? No, this is more the backends, I guess.
Yeah. So I think that would be useful for like querying UTXOs and stuff. But this is like when I connect my wallet, the Sunday dApp can say, hey, we want to connect to Cardano mainnet and the gummy worm layer 2 and the Midgard layer 2. And then the wallet shows a prompt that says, hey, do you want to allow connection to these 3 networks? And then when we're querying UTXOs and stuff, the UTXOs are either we query each network independently, or we, partition them in the response. So we query them all at once. Still got to work through those details and kind of set up a working group with input from a bunch of people. But we plan to be a forcing function on making sure that is nicely represented.
We've been speccing this out for Midgard as well. So if you want to collaborate on a SIP, that'd be great.
Okay, yeah.
I think it's very important that we have not the testnet thing for the reason that you mentioned, and also because that's the number one reasons funds get lost in like a L2 ecosystem. Is like you have to send to a different address every time. You're like, oh, what's my address on Gummy Worm? What's my address on this?
Yeah.
Right? Whereas if everyone has the same address everywhere, then that problem's gone.
Yeah. It sounds related to, this is super old, kind of network IDs, chain IDs, ideas, right? But then also there's this other stuff, I think some URLs or URIs, naming schemes and so on, right? Kind of.
Yeah, I'm the one that wrote that SIP, I think. But so definitely all interconnected. The hardest part is just like getting enough stakeholders in the room to actually decide on what's going to work for everybody's use cases, and then not getting like deadlocked on everybody just having an aesthetic preference for how it works and like holding up the, based on an aesthetic preference as opposed to like an actual technical reason.
Yeah, so I think this group can be a host for also having these conversations, or like as a kickoff here or there. It is basically the thing you brought up last time, right, Phil? I believe, or it kind of goes into the same vein.
Yeah, it's exactly that. The Vitalik blog. It's about that problem.
Yeah, that stuff. Okay.
And it interacts with discoverability, right? Because your wallet needs to know which things you might potentially need to connect with and how to get information about what's going on in those things, right?
Yeah. So I want to point out, for example, this thing we scoped out here, which is more of a short-term thing, right? For example, this specifically says it's out of scope that here the wallet knows about the Hydra heads, right? But that's what we want to maybe eventually have about the individual layer 2s and so on.
Yeah, I mean, as a first step, maybe the dApp might know about the Hydra head, but the wallet doesn't yet, right? That might be kind of a stepping stone to that. But that still means that from the Hydra side, you kind of need a, you can take the Hydra Explorer that you guys built that is aware of which Hydra heads have been deployed and which states they're in, and then you can add a little bit more information about each head that you're currently missing. I think such as like the participants. And maybe some other pieces of information right now. And that would allow, at least for the dApp, to know kind of which Hydra heads it might be able to interact with. And then eventually the wallet interface could draw on the same data source to get that information as well.
Yeah, that could be a direction. Discoverability should be maybe a theme. Question is how much is kind of good enough and what's the next steps, right? Always. I think we have the keys decoded here. These are pub key hashes of their layer 1 keys, Cardano keys, and this is their public keys for their Hydra keys. This is the stuff which is available right now on chain, right? So it's really nothing off chain. It's really just on chain looking at what's there.
Yeah, I think
that's
most of what's needed. You'd have to, double check with some of these dApps to see if they need anything else to be in the Explorer to understand kind of what dApps generally need to discover Hydra heads. But yeah, by the way, Pi, about your comment with the control plane, I think Ilya, you guys also have some stuff that you implemented for the purpose of spinning up Hydra heads on demand and managing them for the same reason, because since we don't have incremental commits and decommits right now, every time we want to do something on on L2, host a new auction's bidding process, right? We have the same group of people, but they're spinning up Hydra heads on demand to host these bidding processes. So I think there's some overlap there in terms of the component that you're implementing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I just wanted to ask Pi whether that work. Is that work you mentioned published somewhere or not? Because we are working on exactly the same thing. So within Hydra auction application, we have something that we call a delegate server, and that delegate server is a way of controlling multiple Hydra heads, because we decided to spin. Well, I think we kind of were forced to do that. So we're spinning a separate head for every auction. And we need to manage all those processes. And in order to do that, we need something. Unfortunately, we decided to use PureScript, which is probably not the best choice here, just because we already used PureScript within that project, and we didn't want to add more languages there. And currently, one of our next step is going to be. So currently, the delegate server is very, very tightly bound to the specific things that come from the auctions per se. But we definitely want to split and try to find the proper boundary between things that can be reused by other teams and other developers. So this is one of the our tasks, and it would be great if we can somehow coordinate probably and collaborate on that.
The context behind this control plane is IOG reached out to us to build a demo that Charles wanted to see at Rare Evo, where we run Hydra on, or we run Doom on a Hydra cluster. It's actually really cool. Sebastian has been working on that with me. And we didn't want it to just be, we dump a bunch of money into a pit and then it, like at the end of Rare Evo, there's nothing useful out of it. So as part of it, we are open sourcing kind of a control plane project I don't know if you have access to that, if you want to share that, Sebastian, or maybe I'll share my screen and just show it off real quick. It is
Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday Swap Finance / if you search for control plane, you might not have access to it yet. Okay. Let me pull it up and I'll share my screen.
Of course, yeah.
It's written in Rust, and right now it's very rough. It doesn't even do what it kind of purports to do, in the sense that right now it's a hard-coded list of Hydra nodes, but the basic idea is that it will serve a web API that lets you query about running Hydra nodes, and basically request, like, hey, in this case, create a new game for me, and it will initialize a UTXO that can be used to play a game of Doom. And then, the idea is that we genericize that workload so that, hey, I'm going to request a new thing, and then it will just kind of it'll have some kind of module to initialize that workload on a Hydra head, and then also to spin up new Hydra heads if it deems that the existing ones are full by some metric. So it's super early on. It's kind of just like in that exploratory phase where we don't even really know what we're building, but it's also, we plan for it to be very AWS native. So I'm very much against the idea that you can build something that without an immense amount of complexity allows you to switch between clouds. I think that is a myth in software that people fall into a trap of. So at least for now, it's going to be very AWS native, and like, oh, it'll spin up an EC2 instance with Hydra running on it and things like that. But maybe we can, in the future, expand it out to other kind of cloud backends or even on-prem. So still very early on. If you wanted to kind of merge our efforts as you work on a rewrite of yours, it sounds like, where you want to kind of move away from pure script, I'm happy to, but also I think it's totally fine if there are multiple solutions to this problem. Yeah, Sebastian.
Thanks for sharing this. I also posted another link here, and I realized, right, actually the Hydra Pay, what from Obsidian did last year, is very much the same thing, which is also, we called it the concept more of a managed topology, where it's more about, okay, you kind of spin up Hydra nodes for your users, ideally in a non-custodial way, right? So you kind of not have them not claim all the funds, but just make the infra available for them until things maybe more lightweight and more easier to use. So there is definitely, everybody seems to be coming into the same situation. Not sure how we can reuse stuff really on the, this is about two-party payment channels, right? You're doing like game instance, arcade machines like that, right? We have auctions. The domain is different. The structure needed is different. Maybe the tools and the clouds are different. But what I would like to maybe ask you all is, has there been one thing which would have made your life a lot easier in kind of now really discovering, managing, and maintaining these things, right? Just expanding from the Hydra project output into these control planes, into these managed situations?
So one thing that, and we've talked about this before, Sebastian, that would be helpful is when we connect to the Hydra node, there's currently 2 modes that we can connect in. There is a give me all of the history, or give me none of the history and just kind of going from here onward. And we really need kind of something in between of, hey, this is the last event that I saw, start from there. Because without that, it's impossible to build something that's robust and performant.
Yeah, that's a very good concrete API improvement proposal, definitely. We'll take that in. Yeah, so in fact, many of these things are API related.
Oh, sorry, Sebastian. I want to comment on something a little bit more long term, right? Because if you look at the reason why Hydra Auction had to implement this component right now for spinning up and spinning down the Hydra auctions with this frequency is because there's no incremental commits and decommits, so you can't have a long-running Hydra head, right? Once those become available, the need will be lessened for that reason, right? So information can flow in and out of a Hydra head. You can have more of a persistent Hydra head, so you don't need to spin them up and manage as many of them by the same group of people. However, you still will need the ability to manage different Hydra heads and spin up and down when you start to get more into the networking aspect, because there, the whole point of networking is that the same participant is in several different state channels, and therefore is able to act as an intermediary to to have some of the stuff flowing between, right? And that's why, for example, in a Bitcoin, they have a robust sort of channel management solution and a peer-to-peer network, stuff like that, so you can discover peers and create channels on demand with them whenever you need to. And indeed, if you look at the way the Bitcoin Lightning Network works, I think they're at least the major players who have who are acting as hubs or within the graph, they rebalance their topology, their local topology quite often, right? They're opening new channels, closing old channels, either to rebalance the funds so that the flows can go both ways in a more balanced way, or they're replacing peers, right? Because they prefer new peers, they prefer some peers more than other peers, so they want to close their channels with peers that they don't want to work with anymore. They want to open them with others that they do want to work with, right? That kind of thing, I imagine, will become more prominent in Hydra, especially as we move more towards like a network of Hydra heads kind of situation. Whereas the opening these temporary Hydra heads just for the purpose of information coming in and out between L1 and L2, that will sort of get reduced as soon as incremental commits and decommits become available.
That's a very good point, really. Yeah, Cardano Lightning. Actually, there is a Cardano Lightning proposal which got funded. I'm not sure. I think Tomas was working on that, or will be working on that. Yeah, Lightning Network is basically this route finding and organizational. It's exactly this. I recall something in the Hydra auction project in the early stages. We thought if only we would have that information on chain, the delegation into a Hydra head would be much easier, much more or less trusted. So I can't recall which, but I think this kind of things would be super important to find out. Like what things, how would we need to enhance the protocol on chain? Because this is hardest to change, right? As always, in order to make this least depending on like off-chain, like metadata services, data layers, and so on, right? So
I think it had to do with the keys, right? Because at the time, what we were facing was from our on-chain coin and Hydra auction, when the seller announces the auction and says that, oh, this auction will be hostable by a particular Hydra head, right? All we could do is specify the minting policy of the particular Hydra head instance, right? That doesn't tell you very much from the perspective of a bidder. Oh, I'm about to enter into this auction, and I want to make sure that this auction is being run by a group of people who will do it fairly, right? There was not much that you could do there. So identifying the group, at least by their keys, so I guess their L2 keys, like their V keys there, would first of all give you more flexibility in terms of restarting the head if the head goes down, right? Because then your on-chain contracts on L1 would allow you to resend your piece of stake that you want to host on L2 to a different Hydra head, but that's being run by the same people. And at the time, I think you said that that was not possible because the L1 stake did not include the keys of the Hydra head participants. Judging by what you showed us with the Hydra Explorer now, I guess you do include the keys in there somehow. But maybe
it may be parameterized.
Yeah. Also, I think we had a slightly different problem. To be honest, I was hoping that one of our team members will be on this call, Dmitry Shuisky. So I'm going only to give you the very brief overview of that issue. So the thing is that in our particular use case, we don't have a Hydra head up front. So we only know about delegates, and this affects how we enforce the trust in the very beginning. So we cannot use Hydra head identifier. We just have to do something to in order to be sure that everyone is in agreement. And basically, we implemented something similar to Hydra consensus, but just for an arbitrary stuff. So every delegate should sign something, and yeah, Dmitry can say more about that. But we believe that this is, at least Dmitry believes that this is a specific use case that probably other people might not be interested in.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be that well, we might have the public keys of the off-chain. Well, we have two credentials, right? One is the Cardano and one is the Hydra credential, which is also premature optimization. Never do that. Both are ED25519 keys. We could just use the same key material. Doesn't matter. I think for one, we only put the key hash, and that's maybe what is not good enough to identify them, like from, or yeah. So it kind of is expanding the scope of the meeting here right now anyways, right? But I think these kinds of things are most interesting to know, okay, where is the protocol lacking in order to make this discoverability and here identifiability, or kind of make sure, okay, this head is actually just another instance of the same kind of setup, right? That thing is maybe the first step already.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember what you're talking about, Ilya. So yeah, actually the way that we got around this limitation of not only being able to target a particular Hydra head instance is that in our DApp-specific L1 contract, we identified the keys of the delegates running the head that we wanted to send to, right? And then in our redeemer to send our piece of stake to L2, we require that transaction to be multi-signed by those delegates. Right. So essentially we say that they're allowed to send to whatever Hydra head they wish, because essentially, you know, we're trusting them anyway for L2 consensus. Right. So if all of these guys multi-sign, but that presents us with the problem that Ilya just mentioned, was that collecting these signatures.
Yeah.
Right. We basically have to create a communication protocol between
a lot of interaction. Yeah.
That is in parallel to the one that's already exists in Hydra. Right. Ideally, it'd be actually really cool to reuse, because Hydra already is collecting signatures from the participants all the time, right? Every time it advances state. Being able to collect signatures from the participants for additional things, so like a modular type of thing that you can add in that, oh, we're going to reuse the same peer-to-peer communication channels to collect signatures for things that are not directly related to the L2 protocol, but is required for something else that wants to piggyback on the same infrastructure.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, let's revisit this maybe another time. Thanks for this input already.
Yeah, I asked Dmitry to prepare a short note on that, so I will send you once it's ready, and we can.
Yeah, let's make sure to have this discussion on GitHub. Yeah, so everybody can benefit from it. Going back briefly again into this, what is Hydra head v1, right? So now we kind of went a bit off, but doesn't matter. So really making sure what we have is kind of usable in the applications is of course highest priority. We took in some like minimum usability things, right? Having this SDK, be able to spend things. I heard administration, spinning up nodes and down, right? This is basically also things we can go into direction and helping out. Question is, how much do we need there? There is this big topic cluster of, I think Phil called it battle-tested, bulletproof, or kind of rock solid. That's what he thinks Hydra head v1 is. Which is of course always hard to tell, right? It should be also audited. It should be well understood and tested, and I believe we have all that, but we also have known issues, and the known issues is something we need to cover. So besides incremental commits and decommits, there is this big problem of, what we said, things which are in the head, right? If, for example, if you mint wrong in the head, you can't take it out. If you do something which is incompatible with the layer 1 at large, you're stuck, and that is probably not acceptable. And if anyone says this is fine, or then I would like to hear it. But I think until then, maybe this is really a must-have for calling it version 1.
Yeah. So some thoughts there. One, Casey from the Aiken team had a really cool idea that I won't share because I don't know if he considers it like secret or proprietary or whatever, but you should talk to him about how to handle this. But two, this also kind of ties into the idea that we talked about, 2 years ago now, where we have these like phantom tokens that can evaporate when you're closing the head.
They're still here. These are still here, you see. It's still an idea. Feedback needed. We're waiting for your comments here.
You're waiting for my comments?
Yeah.
I think phantom tokens are very problematic because you have to consider the fact that the Hydra head could close at any moment in time. And if your phantom tokens disappear as soon as the Hydra head closes, or whatever you were working on with the phantom tokens is going to, it's all going to disappear. You're going to be in an incoherent state potentially, right? Because otherwise, why would you have the phantom tokens in the first place, right? And recovering that on L2 when you respin up the head afterwards is probably very difficult, right? So I don't think you can really rely on phantom tokens because of this, being essentially you need to be ready to go back to L1 in whatever snapshot state you managed to achieve before you had to go to L1.
Well, with incremental commit and decommit, then closing the head is supposed to be like an emergency recovery anyway, right? So the idea here was that the head operators opt in to a set of known phantom tokens for their workload to say, hey, if we ever need to close the head as an emergency bailout, we're all going to agree to sign a snapshot that or we will have been signing snapshots that don't include these tokens, right? So the UTXO that we sign is actually the UTXO that you get from just filtering those tokens out of the UTXO.
Yeah.
Oh no, I understand that, but what I mean is, if the head was closed abruptly because one of the participants was non-responsive, right? And yes, you synchronize, you settle back on L1, right? And when you settle back on L1, all the phantom tokens got filtered out, right? And that information disappeared, right? If you want to restart the head on L2, so in another head instance, and you want to continue some of the work that you were doing with the phantom tokens, that's very hard to do because you've lost that information. And
I mean, you haven't lost it. It's still
midway through kind of converting the phantom tokens into something that is synchronizable, which is the eventual point.
So no, I don't agree. I don't agree because you haven't lost it because so either you're closing the head because consensus is broken down and you shouldn't be expect to reopen the head state anyway, right? Because there's a conflict and you're just saying, hey, we no longer agree. We just want our funds back. We're going to go our separate ways. Or you closed the head because of like some non-responsive state, right? But the head operators still have that information and have that UTXO. So they just open the head with an initial UTXO state with they can also just agree to sign a UTXO with the continuation of those phantom tokens from the previous, right, injected into the snapshot that they sign. So it's obviously it requires opt-in and agreement ahead of time from the head operators, but that's true if you're opening a head anyway, right?
Yeah, that's fair, but that's an additional layer of coordination.
I would like to invite you.
We don't
we'll take this off here.
I just pinged you on the issue. I would like to invite you to continue the discussion there. But I would like a follow-up thought here is also, right? I mean, not bringing back the tokens is this idea. Question is, would be bringing back the whole UTXO, the whole output with the token? Like you have outputs, where there is something problematic and you just can't bring those back, will this be safe still? Albeit it might be problematic still because you're interested in that output, right? But anyhow, would that be better? So not stripping the tokens out of the output, but just saying you can bring back any outputs. This is maybe related to what you mentioned with Casey, right? Because this is not the only idea we have, right? So really only signing snapshots which are compliant was the first idea. Making sure that the snapshots don't contain like the stuff which is problematic is another idea, right? Which is not the full story then again, because minting is not the only reason, right? Another reason is, of course, UTXO becoming too big. Another reason is the outputs that you have are not compatible with the protocol parameters on the layer one, right? For example, minimum UTXO value is a candidate for that. So there is it's not an easy topic cluster, but a very important one. We're collecting these things again here. I just want to point also you into this. Like, I love the conversation, by the way, guys. So I want to point you also in this, like, what could be the plan forward here, right? And I think it has been discussed a bit on like commits and decommits, right? And just bringing back things partly. And also, this is the core idea of this, which is, in our opinion, the most promising thing. The general concept of a partial fan-out. What does that mean? If, like, this emergency case, or basically at any point in time, the main security of a Hydra head, right? You can always decide to just leave. So the head is closed. It's done, right? So in that state, you must be able to just take things out which have been lawful throughout. You have been caring about your outputs, for example, as a participant, and you don't figure out, I don't care about those guys locking up their stuff forever, right? But your outputs maybe are important. So you want to be able to take things out which you care about, so partially. In that sense, making that possible is at least early ideas, but it should be possible in one or two ways. Canonically, serializable Merkle trees, so SNTs, Merkle partition trees are options here, or BLS accumulators, which allow for like sequential zero knowledge-like proofs for taking things out. So this is the idea
here between this partial fan-out idea of withdrawing from a Merkle root, and I think what, Phil, you're going to be doing for Midgard, right? Because once the fraud-proof stage has kind of elapsed, right, and we merge
3Ls.
the new batch into the current state, the withdrawals from the Midgard state will also work in a similar way, where you have like a Merkle root and you're able to withdraw if you show a path to your UTXOs that you're withdrawing. So there might be some overlap and reuse between these two approaches.
There's probably going to be some overlap with Gummy Worm too, because that's how we're planning on handling it there
for
too.
the same reason. Yeah.
Yeah, we're all cooking with water, right? Tag, you there? We won't be having the time to discuss all of this into details now, right? But yeah, that's definitely something we believe, or I believe. That's why it's there. That's why I put it there, and I basically advertise it to you all now. That something like this we need. There's a whole class of self-made problems. Probably you think now, George, yeah, you guys, I had it figured out all along with Hydra, right? A whole class of problems with like kind of having everybody allowed to kind of commit on their own, like concurrently, actually in parallel, which would just go away if you have the head directly open and then only work through this, like incrementally adding, removing things. I run by this, some people already in a monthly in February, but that is yet another idea. And this kind of gives a set of, okay, the protocol would be capable of handling all situations we can throw at it in a convincing way. But yeah, I see people commenting on these things already, right? Or back in the day.
Ironically, if your incremental commits and decommits are sequential, the way that you currently have them set up, direct open heads will probably degrade the opening of the head experience, because at least right now with the current process, people are able to commit their heads in parallel and then collect all the commits, right? So that kind of makes it like you require less sequential steps to open up a head. But if you implement direct head opening without having sort of parallel commits that can be matched together and brought into the head together, now the process to open a head for 5 participants is open a head, then participant 1 commits and participant 2 commits and so on, right?
Yeah.
So
that's
I think
true.
in a way the direct open might be blocked by the sequential nature of incremental commit.
That's very true. It's something identified here actually already in the slide. Commit congestion, I called it, right? Yeah, ideally we would have like incremental commits more in a kind of a concurrent way, but we are also not brave enough to do so and call it super safe right away, right? So that's why we kind of have a sequential committing only incrementally still. We are aware of this, but we would rather want to hear the use cases where this is kind of more annoying than having locked up funds throughout the committing, for example, right? So that's basically the choice you would have, right? By saying, okay, in this situation where we kind of go into this initializing, right? Everybody commits in this initial state here, and running into situations which are probably takes us longer to kind of work around and not being able to collect neither abort versus the pure sequencing of commits, right? And many of the use cases we hear are unidirectional payment channels. Okay, that is one commit anyways, right? Where it's actually even better to directly open and only commit once because only one of the 2 parties wants to commit, for example, and the other one doesn't want to commit anything. So the trade-off is exciting to hear. So maybe call to action, if you have a use case where you have many people committing, thinking about maybe auctions or so, you would have a long sequence of initialization, and maybe we can discuss what that would mean for you, how annoying this would be, and or how we could optimize. Like transaction chaining could be an option, right? But what I expect this to is lower cost and complexity. This means currently you can only open a head with like 6 participants. Why so? Because the collect and the abort are the most expensive steps in the whole protocol.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Of course, 30 is unrealistic given the networking consensus we have right now, right? But then again, right, if you have like 10 parties possible through this, and then you have 10 sequence commits, that maybe still be an interesting use case. I heard a bing.
Yeah,
Oh, it was me, but never mind.
Yeah.
It's okay.
No, cool.
Should we last 5, maybe 10 minutes, just do a roundtable where each participant says, these are the features without which I would consider Hydra v1 to be broken and unusable, right? I think that's the essence of what you're trying to get at, Sebastian.
Yeah.
So far, we've been talking about like what would I like to see in Hydra, but kind of what can I not live without, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Let's start with
Ilya.
Pi.
Or Pi.
Ilya.
Wait, sorry, what's the question?
Which features, if they're missing from Hydra v1, would make you consider Hydra v1 to be broken and unusable?
I'm not sure if I have an answer to that question because like anything that's missing, we're just building into gummy worm. Like, the main things that we're getting from Hydra are not having to interface with the Cardano ledger code ourselves and the robust peer-to-peer consensus. Anything else like, incremental commit and decommit, we're building that ourselves because it is just a fundamentally different mechanism, things like that. One thing that, in lieu of I must have this feature, one thing that would be really nice is in the same way that we've worked to modularize the sources and sinks, it would be really nice to modularize the ledger so that in the future we can experiment with additional ledger rules, things like this fabricate and destroy fields, and things like I want to experiment with this idea of a testable query where, in the Cardano layer 1, you don't want any global state where you say, But in the layer 2, I want to be able to say, hey, here is an attestation from the Hydra head operators that this UTXO is the earliest UTXO at that address, so that we can guarantee, up to the trust of the Hydra head operators that we're processing UTXOs in a first come first served basis, for example. That's still kind of a very ill-formed idea, but that's kind of the, it would be nice to be able to swap out that ledger and still use all of the great Hydra infrastructure for peer-to-peer consensus, snapshot signing, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Okay, I can continue. So I have 2 topics to mention. The first thing is one ticket you have over somewhere higher than version 1, I think. It's optimistic head closure. And this might be a good addition because, currently, because currently we noticed that in many cases, this particular stage is too long. Sorry, guys, I have a baby here. And the other problem is that okay, I'll be back soon. Sorry. Yeah, the other.
Are you mute?
Ilya, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. In another project, Dmitry Shuisky wants to have custom rules, particularly for checking zero knowledge proofs. This is probably out of the scope of version 1, but just a task that he really wants to discuss. Lots of questions here because we have to somehow attach that additional information to do those additional checks, somehow control those rules, and probably it's
Is that additional rules in
to the ledger.
layer 2? The ledger in the layer 2? Okay.
Yep.
Because there's also a
It's the
similar
same thing.
idea. There's a similar idea where you could have additional rules on the fan out to say, hey, when you're fanning out, the layer 1 contract enforces that, for example, no more than 10% of the funds go anywhere but back to the Sunday Protocol treasury, for example.
I see. Yeah.
This was called something like Hydra plugins, right?
I'm getting the sense that you guys are happy with the current proposed Hydra V1.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Instead, you're thinking about Hydra V2 and some of the cool things you'd like to add there.
You mean Hydra Zoa? That's Hydra V2.
Oh, come on. It's too much pressure.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's keep moving. So maybe Phil, I don't know if you have an opinion about Hydra V1 and the definite must-have features that have to be in V1, without which it's considered broken.
If he can't speak now, he already gave basically good points last time and today, just in case.
Yeah, web wallets. That's it. No one will use anything unless there's web everything.
Yeah.
No one touches Haskell. No one touches any backend infrastructure. And mass adoption is the dev ecosystem is already small, so mass adoption is extremely important because when everyone starts using this stuff, when it's web available, then that's when you see actual contribution.
Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah, I would call this already as a good round because don't want to run over too much.
That's right.
I would like to. So next time maybe we will not fit the whole meeting with this discussion. We'll have another round of kind of grooming and preparing things. We maybe have some interactions on these GitHub issues. We collected many today. But I think we will have a very good understanding of what is the things we can call version 1, at least enough that I can call my agenda item done in this regards, right? So maybe we can already start conversing and maybe producing something concrete in next meeting about these like interfacing, the wallet interfacing, that kind of discoverability topics we already touched upon briefly today. If somebody wants to bring that to the agenda who is also then around, I mean, of course, if you can't attend, Phil, right, doesn't mean you need to bring it and don't attend, but that would be like an option. Let's try again. The invite is, I guess, already out. It will be in 2 weeks, same time. And feel free to just amend it. Everybody can change the item. I'll just put your agenda item there. I'll prepare the meeting notes also ahead of time and adopt the agenda there. But
so you want us to go into the calendar event, click the edit button, and add items to add our item to the agenda.
Yeah. Or call me on my phone so I can do it. Ideally, I'm not worrying about everybody's like wants, and it should be like a stage to kind of get everybody's problems also solved and work items produced in one way or the other. So it's not only, I guess, from me on the Hydra project version 1 milestone, but the other things, right? Anything.
Yeah, sounds good. All right.
So thank you all. Notes will be on GitHub and the working group repo. See you all next week, in 2 weeks.
See ya.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks,
Have a good
Sebastian.
one. Thank you all.
Goodbye, bro.
Goodbye.